In November 1930, a fur trapper named Joe LaBelle made his way to a remote Inuit settlement near Lake Anjikuni. He anticipated a warm welcome, familiar faces, and signs of life. What he discovered instead was eerie stillness. Campfires were still burning low. Meals had been abandoned halfway through. Sled dogs lay lifeless, still chained where they had been left. There were no bodies, no signs of violence, and no tracks in the snow. Even the graves appeared to have been unearthed. A whole village, gone. Without explanation, without warning, without a trace. Welcome back, where we dive into the darkest true horror stories ever recorded. Today, we explore the chilling tale of the disappearing village at Lake Anjikuni, one of Canada's most haunting unsolved cases. If you're fascinated by real-life mysteries, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps bring you more stories like this one. Let's begin. Before the headlines, before official investigations and speculation, there was only the wilderness. An endless expanse of frozen land, quiet and unforgiving, a silence so absolute it felt oppressive. Lake Anjikuni lay deep within Canada's subarctic region, in what is now Nunavut. In 1930, to most of the world, it was an unknown frontier. No roads, no radio signals, just a desolate, icy landscape, inhabited by only a few who called it home, and even fewer who passed through. For a small Inuit group, though, it was their world. Their community was small, a handful of cabins near the water's edge. Families lived in harmony with nature, hunting caribou, fishing through frozen lakes, enduring brutal winters. They understood the environment like second nature. They didn't fight the cold, they flowed with it. Harsh to outsiders, perhaps, but this was not a temporary setup. This was their home. These were people hardened by generations of Arctic survival. Joe LaBelle wasn't a stranger. He was a familiar face. He'd traded with them, shared meals, spent nights by their fires. So when he set out for Lake Anjikuni that November, it wasn't an exploration, it was a return to known territory. He was used to the isolation, to the quiet. That was part of the job, but something felt off this time. As he approached, the silence didn't feel normal. It felt wrong. No barking dogs, no smoke from chimneys, no human activity of any kind. He kept going. In such places, complete silence often signals danger. And although he didn't know it yet, what he was about to discover would haunt him forever. When LaBelle reached the village, he expected greetings. Instead, he found emptiness. The cabins still stood, snow gathering on their roofs. A faint wisp of smoke rose from one chimney, suggesting someone had recently kept a fire. But no one emerged. No one answered his calls. There were no voices, no signs of life behind the frosted windows. Moving cautiously, he walked from dwelling to dwelling, calling out. No response. Then he began opening doors. Inside, everything was left as if life had suddenly paused. Meals sat untouched. Furs were hanging to dry. Items of daily life, clothes, tools, weapons, lay in place. Nothing had been packed, nothing disturbed. It was as if people had just stood up mid-action and vanished into thin air. He checked every cabin. Still no signs of violence. No bodies, no sickness. But then, at the village's edge, he saw them, the dogs. Several sled dogs, dead and still tethered. They hadn't been released or killed. They had died of starvation. For a man familiar with Arctic survival, this was the most disturbing part. In the far north, dogs are essential. They aren't just left behind, let alone left to die. At that moment, something inside LaBelle shifted from confusion to fear. And then came the most chilling discovery. In the graveyard beyond the settlement, graves had been dug up. Not by animals. Not by natural causes. They'd been opened. On purpose. Some were empty. LaBelle didn't stick around to investigate further. He left quickly, heading toward the nearest telegraph station. The journey likely took hours, or even days, through punishing terrain. All to send a single, urgent message for help. When the Royal Canadian Mounted Police finally arrived to investigate, they saw the same strange scene. Deserted homes, frozen dogs, untouched belongings, and no trace of the roughly 30 people who had once lived there. No footprints leading away, no sled marks, no bodies, nothing. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. The Mounties scoured the area, questioned nearby trappers, and searched for clues. But there were no signs of violence, no severe weather, no evidence of a mass departure, and no explanation. To this day, the fate of the Lake Anjikuni villagers remains one of Canada's most perplexing mysteries. It began with silence and only got stranger. Newspapers like the Halifax Herald ran stories about a fur trapper discovering a deserted Inuit village under bizarre circumstances. Articles mentioned half-eaten meals, dead sled dogs, and in some versions, disturbed graves. The tale briefly captured public attention as the ghost village of the North, but then coverage stopped. Years later, when researchers tried to revisit the case, they discovered a lack of official records. When questioned decades later, the RCMP claimed they had no documentation of such an event. In their public statements, the RCMP classified this story as legend, possibly the result of miscommunication or journalistic embellishment. Some believe the truth is simple. Perhaps the villagers had relocated, and what LaBelle saw wasn't abandonment but transition. Others argue that the story was exaggerated by newspapers eager for drama. And then there are those who believe something truly strange happened, something we still can't explain. What we do know is this: there's a gap between what the media reported in the 1930s and what appears in the official records today. That doesn't prove a cover-up. It doesn't prove the event happened or didn't. It just means some stories leave behind more questions than answers. And in those shadowy gaps between fact and memory, mystery survives. To this day, no solid evidence has confirmed what happened at Lake Anjikuni, and no one has completely explained it either. What we're left with is a haunting puzzle that has endured for nearly a century, and the search for the truth is far from over. What really happened to the people of Lake Anjikuni? No one truly knows. No witnesses, no answers. Just a ghost village and a mystery frozen in time. Over time, many explanations have surfaced, some grounded in logic, others far more speculative, all trying to solve one chilling puzzle: how an entire village vanished. Theory 1: seasonal relocation. One of the more frequently cited explanations is that the community simply moved on. Historically, many Inuit groups lived semi-nomadic lifestyles, adjusting their settlements based on seasonal hunting patterns and environmental conditions. On the surface, this seems like a sensible conclusion, but upon closer inspection, it doesn't hold up. Why would they leave meals half-cooked, weapons behind, and their sled dogs tied up to starve? These weren't luxuries, they were essentials for survival. The condition of the village didn't resemble a planned departure, and no one accustomed to life in the Arctic would ever leave their dogs behind without a dire reason. Theory 2: sudden natural emergency. Another possibility is that some unexpected natural event, like a sudden disease outbreak, collapsing ice, or avalanche, forced the villagers to flee immediately. In panic, people may leave belongings behind, but even during chaos, there are always clues: footprints, scattered supplies, signs of disruption. At Lake Anjikuni, everything appeared untouched. No signs of distress, no trail of escape, no bodies found. Just frozen homes and abandoned meals, perfectly preserved. Theory 3: misunderstanding or media sensationalism. Some argue the entire episode might have been the result of miscommunication or exaggeration, that perhaps Joe LaBelle arrived at a temporarily empty village and the story was blown out of proportion. After all, sensational stories sold newspapers in the 1930s. Ghost villages and vanished tribes were the stuff of gripping headlines. It's plausible the tale grew with each retelling. The mysterious meals, the open graves, those may have been embellishments added over time. But if that's true, why do early reports across different sources all include the same strange details? Why was the story so consistent before it became legend? Theory 4: alien involvement. One of the more out-there ideas involves extraterrestrial interference. Some proponents point to alleged sightings of strange lights in the skies during that period, suggesting that the people may have been taken in a way that left no physical evidence. There's no solid proof behind this theory, but in a case where all rational answers seem incomplete, it continues to gain traction in fringe circles and speculative media. Theory 5: supernatural or mythical forces. Another chilling interpretation lies in local indigenous folklore. Passed down through generations are stories of spirits and beings said to dwell in the wilderness, some benevolent, others dangerous. One such entity is the Tornat, sometimes described as capable of removing people or entire groups without warning. Other traditions speak of forces connected to nature, death, and isolation. The Wendigo, though not Inuit in origin, is often cited in Canadian folklore, a creature linked to madness, starvation, and luring people into the wild, never to return. To outsiders, these are just tales. But to those raised in these regions, they're warnings meant to be taken seriously. Theory 6. Fabrication from the start. The most skeptical view? That the whole thing never occurred. No disappearance, no dogs, no disturbed graves, just a story born in the pages of a newspaper and retold until it became legend. The RCMP has confirmed that no records exist of such an investigation. Researchers have found no documented names of those allegedly missing. No photos, no census entries, no confirmed belongings. In this view, the legend is nothing more than a mix of isolation, imagination, and journalistic creativity. Maybe that's all it ever was, or maybe not. What's most chilling isn't what was found, but what wasn't. No violence, no fire, no escape route. Just a village, frozen in time, as if life had been paused, not ended. If this was a hoax, it was remarkably detailed. If real, it has never been repeated in any known case. That very emptiness, that clean, silent scene, is what keeps the mystery alive. How could an entire settlement vanish so cleanly, so completely? And why, nearly 100 years later, do we still have no definitive answers? No evidence, no remains. Just a name, Lake Anjikuni, and a legend that refuses to fade. Some claim it was a misunderstanding, that LaBelle stumbled upon an empty camp at just the wrong moment. Others believe something unexplainable happened, something never talked about again. And then there are those who don't try to explain it at all. Because how do you explain a place where time stops? Where people disappear but their world remains? Fire still warm, food still on the stove, dogs still waiting, and no one left to ask the question that's haunted generations. Where did they go? The villagers were never located. No human remains were recovered. No oral histories were passed on. They were simply gone. In the end, what makes this story so unforgettable isn't the theories, it's the void, the cold, the silence, the idea that, one day, without warning, everything could just stop. If this story left you feeling unsettled, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me continue to share forgotten and unbelievable stories from the real world, tales many would rather leave buried. Until next time, stay curious and stay in the light.